I'm Kimberly Henry, and this is Living the Good Life. In this series, we'll feature conversations around ways to embrace the goodness of life and take a big, juicy bite out of it. Food for the soul and the funny bone. Learn to give more time to yourself, become a better friend, lead an amazing life, and how to tell the best joke at the party. Living the good life can mean different things to different people. Whatever it is for you, I hope you'll find some inspiration here to live your most joyful, authentic life. Now, on to today's conversation. How many times have you thought to yourself, my life would make an unbelievable book, or if only I could write this book, I'd help so many people, and perhaps you've just viewed yourself as a published author for any number of reasons, but it just hasn't happened for one reason or another. Seems like such a daunting task, doesn't it? Today, we're going to talk to possibly the least likely candidate to have written not one, not two, but 3 best-selling books on public speaking and creativity. We'll explore both the practical and the mindset steps behind the hows and whys, and perhaps inspire you to your creative writing genius. Seth B Greenwald is a project manager for the world's largest engineering and construction management organization. Yet his passion is writing. He's one of those creative types you'll see on trains, planes, and automobiles with notebook and pen in hand, capturing those random fleeting thoughts that pop into his brain. Seth has written and self-published 3 best-selling books on creativity, goal-getting, and communication. He loves to share his secrets on those topics with the world. Seth's most recent creation is a live online course called Page to Stage for Public Speaking Excellence. He's got a lot of creative stuff in his toolbox. Please help me welcome Seth to our program. Seth Greenwald, how are you?
Hey, Kim, it's good to be here on your podcast, The Good Life. Appreciate you inviting me to talk today. I do like to talk. I am the least creative person to talk, but here I am talking on a podcast. Thank you very much.
And you're talking very well. Good job. So we said in the intro the least likely or least likely person to write 3 best-selling books. Tell us a little bit about your background before you discovered you were this creative person.
Yes, I would. I will tell you how I was always an introverted, analytical engineering type. Ever since I was small, I liked math and science, and I liked to understand how the world worked and how space worked. I had when I was a very small kid, I had a nice picture of the solar system in my bedroom wall, and I would look at it all the time. And it was the idea of how things worked. I never really wanted to travel. I never wanted to be an astronaut. I just wanted to understand how things work. I was very introverted, into ideas, and I knew I wanted to be an engineer from an early age. And engineering is not about public speaking. It's about ideas. It's about making things work. It's about design. It's about sitting in front of the computer, nowadays, and designing. So I never really had the goal of being a speaker or a writer or creative. I mean, some people might consider engineers to be creative, but it's mostly about analysis. It's not what you think about as the creative artist, who's always writing or making art or, painting, whatever. I never wanted to be that person. So I went into engineering school in New York City, the Cooper Union, which is, a fairly good engineering school. And I did graduate barely. It was very, very tough. But the reason I barely graduated is because it was in New York City in the 80s in the East Village, where the punk rockers were, and there was so much to see and there's so much to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I really got inspired to be an art. That's where I got inspired to be an artist. I was going to engineering school and I got inspired to be creative. I got inspired to be an artist just by seeing all the neighbors with the hair, the spiky hair and the nails coming out of their foreheads. It was a very eye-opening experience for this young engineer from the suburbs. So I think that's where my original inspiration came to be creative.
What a time. What a time. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s as well, so I can imagine just being in that space and how colorful in every sense of the word that might have been for you. Did you act on that creative urge or inspiration at that point in time?
Well, I remember going to the East Village into a secondhand clothing shop and buying a funky hat, fedora, and I would wear that hat all around the engineering school. And they say, well, engineers don't wear those funky hats. So, you know. But no, it was it was mostly that I needed to really focus to finish my engineering degree, because it was difficult. It got harder and harder. The math and the science got harder and harder. I really had to focus. At one point I was thinking that I wanted to change schools. I was taking some courses, some psychology courses at NYU, but no, I ultimately decided I still enjoyed engineering, and I got my 4-year degree, my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. But the thing is, Kimberly, I tried engineering for a year or two, but it wasn't my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
I really did try hard. I worked for a firm. It's a funny story that I worked for a firm that designs air conditioning ductwork, and it was fun. I was making artistic ductwork and designed the ductwork. And my boss comes over one day and goes, "Man, Seth, that's a beautiful, beautiful ductwork design. But Seth, since ductwork is above the hung ceiling, no one's ever going to see it." And I'm like, "Oh, I did not know that." And that was the end of my engineering vocation. And I went into industrial design, product design at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, and that was pure. That was almost pure art, and that's where I really became a creative guy in Pratt Institute, doing sculpture and painting, and some industrial design schools are more technical.
Mm-hmm.
Pratt was one of the first ones opened after the Bauhaus. A lot of professors from the Bauhaus came over to Pratt Institute, and they were still there 50 years later, and they were still teaching that form follows function, or opposite of that. It was really like form follows form at Pratt. It had to be beautiful. The products had to be beautiful and functional. So it was a great experience for me, and that's where my creativity really started to gel.
So how did you transition from that into thinking about or acting on writing a book? How did that happen?
Well, but writing, I've always been interested in going into bookstores all my life. So I've always loved books. I've always loved going into stationery stores and buying notebooks and pencils and pens. And I always loved gathering my thoughts in paper. I never knew I wanted to be a writer till fairly recently. But I always knew that I enjoyed collecting my ideas and collecting my thoughts and writing in little snippets, here and there. And what happened with my first book was basically that it only was maybe 10 or 12 years ago that I started blogging. When I started blogging. So I started writing short articles for other people's blogs, and people were saying, "Yes, Seth, those are pretty good. Write some more." So I wrote more.
What kind of subjects were you writing on?
Let's see. Yeah, mostly about creativity, how to be creative. I remember I was into meditation at the time, so I wrote a lot about how to meditate, and it was things that were less technical and more about the inner life. And I probably started writing about speaking as well. How the difference between thinking and speaking. Analytical and synthesis. But in any case, I just started writing and writing more and more and more, and the financial crisis hit, and I was laid off from my design job, so I had some time to put together my own website, and that just led one thing to another. Creating content for your own website, it's a full-time job, and I really started enjoying it. And one day when I was commuting into the city, this is after I got a job at the Army Corps of Engineers, and I was looking at all the little scraps of paper that were ultimately in my iPhone. I started using the notes section of my iPhone, and I'm like, wow, why can't I just put all these notes together? What would happen if I put all these little notes together? Can I come up with something bigger than a bunch of notes? So I started writing on the train.
So these notes were just like thoughts that were fleeting through your mind at different parts of the day, or what were these notes?
Yeah. At first, it was fleeting, random notes. That's how creativity works. You don't try to judge the ideas that come into your brain. You just capture those ideas for future use, right? That's the foundation of creativity. Don't edit your thoughts. Don't edit your ideas. Don't judge them. Just collect them. So these are just random thoughts. I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of notes, and I started looking at them and culling them and putting them into categories, into topics, And then in the topic, and I didn't really know what I wanted to write about, but ultimately, what it came out to be was the topic with the most notes was how to be creative, right? How to be creative, because I'm at the I'm a composite between engineering and artist, right? I'm right in the middle. I'm analytical and creative. So I needed to choose which direction to move in. And up until then, my whole life was analysis. Even though I was in the creative field, my mindset was still about analysis. And I wanted to be more about how to put things together, more creative, how to put things together.
So these were notes. So these were notes that you're kind of taking for yourself to edify your creative side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why a lot of people write books, right? To edify, to clarify what they're interested in learning. It's self-learning. If you write a book, you can teach yourself, right? And then if other people are interested, that's fantastic. But primarily, a lot of writers write books because they want to learn about a certain part of themselves or a certain part of the world. It's creating a story, and it's just something that comes out from within. So my within was about how can I be more creative? How can I be more open-minded, right? So my first book, called Secrets of a Creative Warrior, is like 50 techniques, very simple techniques on how to become more open-minded. And things as simple as why don't you just leave your home a little earlier and take a different path to the train? Why am I taking the same path over and over to the train? You get caught in these habitual cycles, and once you get caught in a habitual cycle, everything shuts down in terms of creativity, right? You don't see things anymore. You don't hear things anymore. You don't smell things anymore. You're not open to new experiences. So I wanted to be open to new experiences because I knew they were out there, but I was lazy. So the first book was about how to open yourself up to new experiences. That was called The Secrets of a Creative Warrior.
And how did you find time? Because you're commuting to a job, which I assume you work full time. So how do you find time to gather all these notes and put them together into something that makes sense to all of us?
Yeah, that's a good question, because all you have is time. All I had is time. And I'm a very good project manager, right? I'm an excellent time manager. That's why I'm an engineering manager for the Army Corps of Engineers. So I'm an excellent time manager. So
I need you. I need you to like give me some of that
yeah,
osmosis, time management by osmosis.
yeah, I can certainly do that because that's my engineering brain, right? It's
Uh-huh.
all about time. It's all about scheduling. It's the opposite of being creative because creativity is not about scheduling,
Right.
unless you're a professional writer and you need to get a book out in a certain time. And so, yeah. So my question to myself while commuting was, how long do I want to, I knew had the idea, I wanted to publish a book. So I said, how long do I want to publish a book? In how long? And I said, I want to publish a book in 1 year.
Okay.
So I did my math. I said, okay, I have 2 trips per day. I have 5 days of commuting. I'll take off 1 or 2 a Friday afternoon. I won't feel like writing. On Wednesday afternoon, I won't feel like writing. So I'll have 8 or 9 trips per week. I'll be commuting like 50 trips per year. And so how many trips is that?
Oh, wow. So you're talking about train, your commute to work.
Yeah, every day my train.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 450 trips in a year. And I'm still doing my math. So how long do I want my book to be? How many pages do I want my book? So I did some research and I saw the type of book that I wanted was 150 pages, right? I did the math, right? Simple. I want 150 pages. I had 450 trips in 1 year. How many pages do I have to write per trip? Kimberly, how many pages do I have?
1/3 page per trip.
Are you an engineer? Because that's exactly right. Now, when I had my book launch in Pleasantville, where I live, in the Village Bookstore, I had some of my engineering friends listening very intently to what I just had told you, the math puzzle I just told you, and one of my friends, Eric, the engineer, goes, "Oh, I have the idea. I have the answer. I have the answer," just like he was in school. 1/3 of a page per trip. And it was everyone was laughing because they're not engineers. They think engineers are geeky, and we are. But
But apparently you're creative too. So
I'm creative. I've got my
that's
creative
awesome.
side. So that's the story of how I wrote my first book on my train within a year.
Did you stick to that schedule? Did you stick to the 3rd page a trip or?
Yeah, for the most part, because the thing about creativity is that you need a schedule. Your creative muse, which I call my creative warrior, was expected to write for half an hour at 8:15 every morning because I trained him like that. I trained my muse to come out at 8:15 to 8:45, and he was raring to go. And it was a wonderful experience because you get to connect with your inner creative soul, your essence. Where do ideas come from? Well, they come from you. You just got to train your muse, and I did. And it was a wonderful experience because every morning and every afternoon, the ideas would just flow, and all I had to do was write them down. You ever hear someone say they're just a vessel for creativity? Well, I was. And I'm like, this is weird because up until now, I've been an engineering mind. I had engineering mind, and I've analyzed everything. Well, now I connected with my true creative spirit, and I was hooked. I was hooked, and that's basically what my second book was about, called "Answering the Call of Your Creative Warrior." How do you connect with your personal muse?
Let's talk about that a little bit because there's so much more to writing a book than the analytical part of scheduling the time and, putting the words on the page. But how do you decide on topic? How do you organize a book? And I would assume that comes from that answering the call piece.
There's 5 steps to writing a book, or at least self-publishing a book. But the first step is writing it. You got to write the book before you self-publish it, right? Would you agree? You got to write the book before you self-publish it. Now, the first step in writing the book is coming up with the big idea. What is the idea that you're going to write about? You know, you can write, anyone can write a book, but not everyone can write a good book. And a good book comes from good ideas. So the first thing you have to do is come up with your good idea. There's a difference between writing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my writing process is letting the idea flow, right? Connecting with my muse and just let the words come out and put them on the paper. No editing, just let it happen. Most of the time I didn't know what I was writing about. I had an idea. I had the big idea of what I wanted to write, but it was a magical, spiritual experience where the words just flow out of me and onto the paper. So that's what your listeners have to cultivate if they want to write a book. They have to understand that you just let it happen. You connect with your muse and just let it happen and don't edit. Because if you edit, the muse goes away and you have a bunch of gobbledygook.
It's similar to the process of like brainstorming for anything, right? The minute you start editing the ideas, they stop flowing.
Yes, exactly. No, yeah, you're right, Kim. It's about brainstorming, and brainstorming is so much fun. And people don't realize that, oh yeah, that's silly stuff. That's for kids. That's silly because it is silly, but that's where the ideas come from.
Best tool ever, brainstorming.
Exactly, the best tool. So my point is, you have to start writing. You just got to get it down on paper, and then after you get the first draft, right? Then after you have a first draft of your book, then you go back and edit it, and that's where the engineering analytical brain comes in, and that was not fun.
Did you self-edit? You did your own editing?
Well, you have to, because you're the only one who really knows what your book is about. I was going to say the second step is to hire an editor, but that's only after you do your first editing. That's only after you do your first, second, and third editing. The editor can edit for grammar and for content and a little bit, but mostly it's about you editing your first draft.
Sure.
Right? And then you get a second draft, and you get a third draft, and by the time you get like around the fourth draft, maybe it's ready to be edited by a third party, which I did. I hired an editor to finish it up, to polish it up.
Mm-hmm.
But before I hired an editor, I hired my wife, who's also a very good editor. So it
took 3 passes through the editing machine. Great.
Yeah. So it's not a lot of fun. So the fun part for me is not editing. The fun part for me is creativity. A lot of people enjoy the editing process, but not. And I'm getting better at it. I'm enjoying it more, but I really enjoy that, just brainstorming, right?
Flow.
The idea, the flow, the flow, exactly. The connecting with the flow, which is magical. Yeah.
Sure. But apparently the editing piece is worth it because you've done it 2 more times. So what comes after the editing?
What comes after the editing? So after you have your words all the way you want it, your interior of your book, it's all set. The editing is done. You need to think about what your readers will see in the bookstore or on Amazon. Are you a professional graphic designer? Most people are not professional graphic designers. They need to think about what their cover looks like, what their book cover looks like. Does it represent the main idea of the book? Is it selling the book? Are you marketing it right? Do you have the right audience? There's so many things that goes into the cover. And the title, is the title representative of what you're talking about? Does the cover art represent what you're talking about? It turns into a lot about marketing, and this is so important. This is extremely important, because if your book cover looks unprofessional or doesn't match what's inside, it's going to fail. You're not going to sell many copies. So marketing and design are so important after you get the book written. Now, I'm a professional graphic designer as well. I do a lot of things creativity-wise. So I had a good idea on what I wanted to look like, but I still hired a professional graphic designer to execute the idea of my books because they were better at it. They were better at the design, better at the Photoshop, better at the coloring. And so it came out. I'm very happy with that process. But I have to encourage your listeners to definitely hire an editor, definitely hire a graphic designer to make your book professional looking. Because the goal of your book is, you wanted to sell copies, right? If you didn't want to sell copies, you would just stick with a journal, right? You wouldn't do a book, right? You would stick with just writing in your journal for yourself. The journal is just for yourself. Writing a book is for your audience out there in the world. I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I always was on the edge of being a creative guy and a business guy, and that's why I don't stop at just the ideas. I want to share it. I want to share it with the world. I don't necessarily want to make lots and lots of money. That's not my focus. It's just sharing things with the world, sharing my ideas with the world. And the way to do that is to produce a professionally looking, interesting, reading book. And that's what I did.
Do you recommend self-publishing? That seems like the way to go for most people.
These days, the publishing, the big five publishing companies are not going to look at a newcomer's book or manuscript. They're just not. There's no room for them anymore to take risks on new authors.
Right. Well, but it's so easy now. The world has changed so much. Just in the last 10, 20 years, you can self-publish a book pretty easily.
And you could, and you should. If you want your book out there, you really should think about self-publishing. And that's what I did. I'm a DIY guy, a do-it-yourself guy. So I asked around. I took some courses. And I figured out how to self-publish a book. And it really, like you say, it really wasn't that hard. And it almost cost me like zero money. It doesn't cost any money to self-publish a book, except hiring an editor and hiring a graphic designer. But it doesn't cost you any money to upload the book to Amazon. Once you have the professional-looking cover and the professional-looking inside, you go to Amazon. I mean, there are, Amazon. There's a few others, right? But Amazon's the main one, and which I did. It used to be called Create Space, but Amazon took them over as part of their self-publishing wing. And it really doesn't take long at all to self-publish a book on Amazon, and it's free. They don't charge you. Amazon does not charge you to self-publish a book if you have. Right. They take, depending on what the cost, your retail cost of your book. I get 70% of my retail price. Amazon takes 30%. Because I think if your book is under $9.99, you can keep 70%. If it's above $9.99, it's a little. You keep less.
So, but you have your book. You've done a book signing. Or maybe more than one. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You've been in bookstores, so I assume you're printing some out and making them available locally. How does that process work?
Oh, it's once it's uploaded to Amazon, you could simply click on the button that says, I want some author's copies.
Ah, okay.
And they ship you. It's called POD. It's called Print on Demand.
Uh-huh.
And if you only want one copy, it's the same amount as if you want hundreds of copies sent to you.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's called Print on Demand. It's really simple. It's changed the publishing world forever.
Yeah.
Because, before you used to have to, order the books from your publisher and in bulk and put them where you put them. Like my first, actually, well, that's a different story, but my first company was a greeting card company called SBG Cards. This is the 90s, before Amazon, before self-publishing. And I went to the traditional route and printed 10,000 cards, greeting cards,
Oh,
because I
wow.
needed that in order to sell them at the price point I needed to sell them at.
Mhm.
And where do you store 10,000 greeting cards? You store them in your mother-in-law's basement.
Right? Are they still there?
So they are still there, but they didn't sell so well.
So how does it feel for you, like this engineer / creative personality, to go out and promote your book?
Yeah, it's not something that introverted engineers like to do,
Uh-huh.
right? They don't like to talk to them about themselves. They don't like to promote themselves, and a lot of people have that. A lot of people have that mindset. They shouldn't talk to them about themselves.
Right.
But so it was hard. It was hard. It was difficult, though. I always knew I needed to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to for my greeting card company. I remember uh, buying a table at a local Ninth Avenue food festival,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a tent selling my greeting cards in the on the street. So it has to be done. You have to do it, and I wasn't comfortable doing it, but many years down the road, I'm feeling much more comfortable self-promoting because it's necessary.
And you're teaching now. You're teaching, like you were at an event in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco not long ago. Tell me about that
Yes.
and the New York Writers Conference or
Mm.
convention.
Yeah. Well, back in February of this year, I went to San Francisco. I was invited to be a speaker, keynote
Mm-hmm.
speaker at the San Francisco Writers Convention,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just writers who, like we're talking about, want to write their own book. Some of them self-publish their own book, and I spoke to them about that. But primarily, I spoke to them about public speaking there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something called um, pitch slam, right? Pitch slam
Mm-hmm.
at a writers conference, and that's where the potential writer meets potential agents and potential publishers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets 90 seconds to pitch his book idea to
Wow.
these agents. And I encourage all of your listeners who want to write their own book to go to a pitch slam at a writers conference before they even complete their book to get feedback from these professionals. They will tell you right away if it's interesting or if it's not interesting or what you need to work on. And it's so imperative to be able to talk about your book in a convincing way in 90 seconds because is called marketing, right? That's called marketing, right? The
Right.
back cover of your book is only a few paragraphs. The back cover of your book is what sells your book. So a lot of writers don't like to be, they're not good at, they don't like writing about their book. And my course called Page to Stage is a lot about writing about whatever you want to sell. It's about creating a persuasive speech, which is called a pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm teaching
Mm-hmm.
right now. It's a 6-week online course called Page to Stage: Your Bold Journey to the Peak of Public Speaking Excellence.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really about being able to sell, being able to talk about what your creation is, and being able to pitch it in a way that will pique the interest of your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that idea through going to pitch slams at writers conferences.
Okay, so you are a Renaissance guy. You have you've written about creativity. You've written about public speaking. You're teaching, really both. Leaping from the author to the public speaker. What's your favorite thing about all of these processes? Why do you continue along this journey, this path?
That's a good question. Well, it's number one. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun to be creative, right? I enjoy that creative adrenaline rush of being able to just brainstorm. That's number one. Number two is I learn about myself. I'm growing, right, intellectually and emotionally and spiritually, just by doing this work. And number three, I'm sharing my ideas with the world. There's so many reasons to be creative, because what's the point of life, right? What's the point of life if you're not growing, if you're not learning? You don't want to just be stuck in your little cocoon your whole life. You want to grow, right? You want to learn. And that's what, and number four, it's giving me confidence, right? It's giving me confidence. I've seen that I can do it. And number five, it's a challenge. I love challenges and I love learning. So there's so many reasons to be creative, to write your book, to publish your book, to speak about your book. It's all about the good life.
Yes. You nailed it. I don't even have to ask the question now. You nailed it. And we spoke with another guest on the imposter syndrome, Jen Grasso, and I think what you're talking about here really lends itself to that conversation, or vice versa, in that if you're feeling the urge to write a book, if you're feeling the urge to explore writing a book, I think you should just go for it, because in the end, you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to grow. You're hopefully going to do it and then establish your self-confidence and your credibility. And you're going to create a whole new avenue. Or you're going to check that off the list and say, okay, I did that. It wasn't quite what I was looking for or wanting to get out of the experience. Now I know, and moving on down the road to something else. So would you agree with that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I thought, except I thought after my first book I would be done with it, but I got hooked. I got hooked on the process.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just writing a book. It's become, it became my tool to change myself. It became my avenue to improve myself. It's really helped me see that what life is all about. And so I'm going to continue to do it, forever and ever, as long as I can, and because writing is magical. Writing is magical, and brainstorming is magical. Creativity is magic, and there's no reason to. And it's an endless source, right? When you find your creative warrior, as I call your muse, it's going to change the trajectory of your life. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to empower yourself to take your life where you want it. And if you're at a crossroads right now, it's going to help you figure out which road is the right road for you to take.
I love that. I love empowerment. That's one of my favorite words, because I think it just changes the trajectory of anyone's life when you understand that you have that empowerment, the choices, the ability to move forward in a direction. And I love the words that you just shared as far as taking control and changing the trajectory of your life. So meaningful. Seth, I want to make sure that people know how to reach you if they want to learn more about your books, learn more about your teaching, learn more about your course. So let's share your website, and we'll put all of this in the show notes. But for those who are listening and want to jot down a note and stick it in your book and someday pull it back out again and put it to work. So the website I have for you is creativewarriorsecrets.com. You also have a speaker page, which is for people who want to become speakers or become better speakers. Is that right?
That is correct. Right on Facebook.
Okay. That's the facebook.com/creativewarriorspeakers. And then you can always email Seth at creativewarriorsecrets.com. You can also check on his website for more information around that Page to Stage 6-week course that he was talking about. That's the developing your pitch, right?
That is correct. Developing your pitch.
Is that only for writers, or can anyone get some some good insight there.
Oh yeah, it's for anyone who wants to learn how to become a better writer and a better public speaker. It's in two parts. The page, right, to the stage. It's all about preparation, and the way you do that is to prepare and understand what your main message is, and to structure your speech in a way that makes that's clear, concise, and compelling. And then only once you have those elements, then you go on to the public speaking elements of authenticity, finding your authentic speaker self, and how to engage your audience with excellence. So it's a page to stage process. It's a 5-step formula, and that's what my last book is about, called The Engineer's Formula for Public Speaking Excellence. It goes through the 5 steps, the 5 elements of public speaking excellence, and the first 3 are about writing. So I encourage you to look at my website for more information about that.
Awesome. CreativeWarriorSecrets.com/page, 2 stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming if folks want to check out your books, they're on Amazon and other various locations.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Seth, it has been a great pleasure having this conversation with you today. I thank you for sharing your journey with us and inspiring us to be creative and tap into that creative warrior, muse persona, and transitioning or moving forward into whatever's possible.
Anything's possible. Everything's possible when you tap into that endless source of creativity. Yep.
All right. Seth, have a fantastic day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Have a good day. Take care.
Be sure to check the show notes for links mentioned in this episode, and join us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community for previews of each episode, the opportunity to pose questions directly to our guests, bonus content, and a community of people committed to living their best life and sharing the journey. Thanks for listening. Let us know what value you received from this episode and what you'd like us to explore in the future in the comments. And please take a moment to drop us a like or some stars. I'm Kimberly Henry. Let's get out there and live the good life.